looks like we have our entire subcommittee here, so I'm just gonna I'll open the meeting now. It's 2:06. And just take a quick attendance. I see everyone's here, but Luca Bana is here. Lorenzo Pizarro
Yes,
here, Jim Young,
present.
and I'm here, so we're 4 for 4 um on this, and thank you to everyone from the town staff for jumping on as well. I think we can just jump into it if we want. If we want to start with if you're David Gould, do you want to start and just run through?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with natural resources. Just so you're all aware, Michael Cahill, who is our new climate resiliency and sustainability planner, is also um, listening in. We have a couple of new line items that were inserted into this budget. So overall, there's very few changes with the natural resources budget. There are some changes that are due to contractual reasons: longevity pay, sick time, and LTIA, vacation earned buyback. There is a change in the overtime budget. It shows an increase of $3,000, but essentially what that is a reallocation. If you look at the hazardous waste line item, that is reduced by 3,000. Essentially what we did, we took 3,000 from hazardous waste and put it into the overtime budget so that we have some costs that we can use, some funding that we can use for costs associated with hazardous waste day. We end up having to pay for overtime for the DPW staff that sets out all the barrels and the traffic controls and then picks it up, and also a custodian to access the building for bathroom facilities for all of the staffing. So rather than just use our regular line item, we were hoping to be able to use hazardous waste since it's the funding source that's applicable to the event. So that's one change you'll see there. The other is what I had previously mentioned, which is the climate action program line item. So that's a new line item in our budget for $25,000. And that's going to go to help Michael work with the MVP program, as well as the climate action plan that he's been working on. So that's going to help us be able to implement some of those directives and goals that are going to come out in the climate action plan that we have that should be issued sometime in April. So it would allow us to start implementing some of those goals. Overall, that's pretty much the changes that you'll see in the budget.
And the just on that line item that you guys are moving over, because that's where the funding is coming from. That's obviously like in the town manager's budget for that other department as well, right? You said the $3,000.
So that's in our line, and we have a hazardous waste cleanup line item. And if you go through that, you'll see it's been reduced by 3,000. Essentially, it's just moving it from hazardous waste cleanup into the overtime.
Right.
Yep.
Does anyone on here from the finance committee have any questions or comments on that? Or anyone from the public? While we're here, okay. Excellent. Thank you very much
You're very welcome.
for that. I think next what we had put was the harbor master on here. Chad, if you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dunn, and thank you for the time. I'll just kind of start from the top of the budget. There were some changes for FY25, and I'll just kind of cover those as we go through. So obviously for FY25, we had some contractual obligations that increased that line a little bit. We also hired a part-time C5 admin assistant, and that was part of the reorganization from us going from DMEA under the police department. So there was some admin needs that needed to be covered there. So our C5 actually just started last week, and that'll be new for next year's budget. We also did an increase for seasonal part-time harbor master assistant hourly wages. They were previously at 1592 to 1912. And what we saw was a sort of lack of interest, and we weren't competing with neighboring towns. So typically the candidates that we see that apply for Plymouth for seasonal harbor master positions are also applying to Duxbury, Marshfield, and other surrounding communities. So we found that we were at a pretty severe disadvantage in the wages side, so we weren't getting the best candidates possible. So we did increase it from 18, which is the starting rate, to 22. So depending on how many years they return and also licenses and different qualifications that they may have, we're able to pay them a little better. We also did increase overtime, and that was based on the cruise ship coming to Plymouth. We obviously did 3 trial runs in the fall, but this year it's I think just about 22 runs. So that's going to keep us quite busy. And that overtime was sort of built into what the town's charging for dockage to the cruise ship. So that money for dockage will go to the town, but we understood there would be some increase in overtime costs hosting the cruise ship. So we did increase that by $9,500. So that's kind of the salaries piece. The expenses section, we did increase repair and maintenance, and that's to cover the cost of waste oil disposal. So the town is required to have waste oil disposal per Coast Guard regulations for the commercial fishing vessels here in Plymouth. That was typically paid through the DMEA hazardous waste account, but now that we're on the outside of DMEA, we wanted to establish funding to remove that waste oil. We also did mooring operations. You saw an increase for service costs and maintenance items. We have 12 town moorings that visiting boaters use, and we charge them $65 a night to stay on those moorings, which and just about we collect anywhere from about $50,000 to $60,000 per year from those stays. And obviously that's helping support the local tourism industry by having people visit Plymouth by water. We also did include the annual launch service for those 12 town moorings. This past year, we did receive VSB money to cover the cost of the launch service. We were almost to a point where we were not going to cover launch costs, but we made a pitch to VSB, basically trying to make it as convenient as possible for visiting boaters to come ashore. Because if they stay on the boat and they stay on the mooring, they're not spending money in town. So the idea is we wanted to try and make that as convenient as possible for them to come ashore, hoping that they might come ashore for a couple of hours. Maybe they go back to their boat, and then, maybe they go back out to dinner. Whereas if it was not free or not included in the cost of renting the mooring, they might just say, let's not go out to eat tonight. Let's wait until we're in Sandwich or, someplace where it's more convenient to get ashore. So we did, VSB was gracious enough to give us funding for that for this past season, with the understanding that we would then try and incorporate that into our budget for FY25. We had a slight increase in education and training by $900, and that was just basically to support workforce development through any sort of classes and training that the staff could take. I think we're trying to basically train and make sure staff has the ability to not only take these courses, but maybe seek reimbursement for them. We increased supplies and materials due to increased costs associated with medical equipment. We maintain a number of AEDs, not only for the maritime facility here, but all of our fast response boats have AEDs on board. And that's when minutes count and you're out on the water. Early defibrillation can be the difference of saving a life or not. But those can be quite costly to maintain. So the batteries are loan. They're lithium-ion batteries that are about $500 a piece, and you have to replace the pads as well every couple of years. So we did increase supplies and materials to cover those costs. And then the last piece was uniforms. We had an increase there. As mentioned, we switched from one department to the other, so we had some added cost of switching over uniforms. We were able to incorporate the winter uniform switchover, but coming up in July, some of the summer uniforms and such will have to be switched over as well. So we did up that. And I think that covers most of the changes. We obviously had departmental equipment as well, if you want me to cover that.
No, I think we went through that already for our committee, so
Oh, okay. All right, great.
we get that. I don't know, does anyone from the advisory and finance have any questions or comments on that one? I have just a few. Do you think that increase in those temporary part-time salaries will attract people to come in? Because it seems like there's been a little bit of trouble with the lower pay getting people.
Yeah. So we looked at some of the I'll call them, surrounding towns or our sort of competitors. I mean, typically what we find is for seasonal jobs, people will apply for 2 or 3 different communities. This job, a seasonal harbor master assistant, just about every department in Massachusetts is hiring summer seasonal people. And, really what these people are sort of looking at is, what does Plymouth pay versus Marshfield or Sandwich or further down the Cape? And if they are a good candidate, they'll, sort of look at the offers that they get, and they'll typically take the town that pays the most. So we found we were at a bit of a disadvantage looking at comparables around us. So we wanted to increase that to be more competitive. So we're hopeful that we get more applicants, better applicants that will decide to work for the town.
Great. And then just another question. How's the reorg going? Being under police instead of marine and environmental?
So we're obviously I mentioned the admin. There's a couple of things that we're still working on, but now's a good time of year to kind of work on that stuff for us. So it's been going good. I mean, obviously we had the entire summer working together, and we're kind of the admin is a really big piece that we were able to get going now, and obviously they'll be with us through the summer as well, which will be really helpful. But yeah, we're just trying to get everybody trained up and ready to hit the ground for 25 or 24, really.
Great. And that's all I got. Does anyone else have anything, or anyone from the public have any questions or comments on that portion of the budget? Oop, I thought I just heard someone, but and I think I'm gonna quickly or I think I didn't the first time, but I think maybe we should vote on it was suggested to me in the chat that we should vote on each portion of the budget individually if people are okay with that. So I'll take a motion for the harbor master's budget now, and then we can go back if that's okay with people.
I'd be
Okay with me.
happy to make a motion.
And I would second.
Great, thank you. I'll just write this down. Does anyone have any comments? Okay, Mr. Cabana,
Yes,
Mr. Pizarro,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. So that's unanimous. And then let's go back to Marine and Environmental Affairs, if anyone wants to make the motion on that.
So moved.
I'll
So moved.
second.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Cabana,
Yes,
Mr. Pizarro,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. That's also unanimous. Okay. So next, if we can go to emergency management, is which I believe is Christian Horvath.
Good afternoon. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for having me. I'll just start and run down real quick. Usually, emergency management is thankfully one of the shorter ones that everybody has to hear. The slight increase for personnel services is for my salary at the emergency management agency. It's going up to 70% through the town, 30% from previous grants and from Holtec. Debris management stays the same. We hold that for the winter storms and any kind of cleanup. Obviously, the large increase for us is the 1.285, and because transition to the consolidated dispatch center just made the most sense to keep the money under emergency management. And then really the only other increase is an extra $1,000 for training, going from $2,000 to $3,000 just to attend different training evolutions.
Great, thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any questions? Anyone from the public have any questions or comments? Okay, I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Cabana,
Yes,
Mr. Pizarro,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. Thank you, Mr. Horvath.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Police, Chief Flynn.
Good afternoon, Mr. Don, committee members. I sent a memo along to kind of outline my budget for this year. As you heard before, many of my personnel service increases have to do with the contractual obligations the town has to its employees. Some of the rise in costs in my other expenses line has to do with increased vendor increases and projected increases from other suppliers that we know are coming down the road. And my department equipment request is the increase for each vehicle that's going to be replaced this year. My budget also includes several new initiatives, including a crime analyst. That'll be a new position. They'll be tasked. That person will be tasked with studying crimes and offenders and victims in the community to help us strategize to alleviate crime and improve quality of life in the town. Another new initiative is a co-response program. It's been very successful since it's been established 2 years ago. As you know, we have clinicians that ride with officers on patrol, and they respond to mental health calls and assist our residents in getting the help they need other than a jail cell. Right now, the program is only in operation Monday through Friday from 8 till midnight. And we're looking to expand the program into the weekends. We found that we really have a need for expanding the program into coverage of weekend as well. Summer impact program. As you know, we do have a number of beaches and parks and other similar facilities that they really draw a lot of people in the summertime. It has taken a toll on my budget and overtime, so I'm looking to increase up, add that specific program just for those areas with an addition of $100,000 to cover personnel costs. And finally, drug recognition evaluator.
Okay, well, could you come up from,
A drug recognition expert, that would be an officer, well, more than one officer will be trained in recognizing or determining when a person is under the influence of drugs other than alcohol at certain incidents, mostly motor vehicle stops. We have seen an increase in drug use over the years, but in order to help appropriately enforce the law and bring those people to court, we needed to know what type of drug they're on, and if they're not cooperative, it doesn't work out very well for us. So that's it in a nutshell. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone from the committee have any questions?
I have a
Mr. Eno?
question, Mr. Chair. Chief, can you talk a little bit about that program that you talked about that's only during the week? Can
The
you give us an
co-response
idea?
the co-response program?
Yeah, can you give us an idea how many responses they did in the past year, and why you think it's a good idea to increase that part of it? Is it turning into less arrests and better for the residents?
So we've found since we've implemented the program, and I wish I had the data right in front of it, I can get it to you.
Yeah.
We have seen a vast decrease in number of arrests, officer use of force incidents, injured officers, officer complaints, and injuries to individuals. We find that this program, some departments call it almost a jail diversion program, because what we found in the past is where our hands were tied and we didn't have the resources, many of these individuals ended up in the back of a police car in handcuffs. But right now, since the implementation of the program, we're finding that that's not always necessary. They typically go willingly when we make the request, and we get them the resources that they need.
Thank you, Chief. It sounds like a great thing to explore, to do even more of in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything? I just want to, Mr. Cabana, you're muted right now.
Thank you. I would just like, as a private citizen and also as a member of this committee, I would like to thank all the heads of the public safety for the town of Plymouth. You have a very important job, and you deserve as much support and help from the public as you can get. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And,
Our pleasure.
Mr. Howard?
good afternoon, Chief. This is Bruce Howard. I'm acting as a private citizen, also happen to be a member of Advisory and Finance. Regarding this, this program, yeah, I was wondering if the need is greater on the, like, Friday night and over the weekend. Do the positions need to be staffed as much during the week as they do on the weekends?
They really do. What we have found is when we look at the data, there's really no specific date or time that the issues arise. They can arise at any time. They don't stop on the weekends, and because we don't have a co-response clinician with us, we end up a lot of times having to revert back to our old ways, which isn't always the best case for anybody involved. So
yeah, I guess my question was, do you need them more on the Friday night and through the weekends rather than during the week? Could you adjust their work schedule accordingly?
I wouldn't say that we need them more on the weekends. I think we need them each day equally, to be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just just so everybody knows, the current program we have now does not cost the town anything, any funds at all. We work closely with Jonathan, FCP out of New Bedford. They give us the clinicians. They pay their salaries, their benefits, and they get reimbursed through insurance, the insurance process. The problem is there's so many communities right now looking for these clinicians. They're becoming more difficult to find, and the organization cannot promise us that they could find us more clinicians. And we feel that we've used them so much, and the program's so important to us that if the need becomes, we will hire our own, or we use this money to entice or help them hire additional staff.
Great. Mr. Howard, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you for your response.
Excellent. Anyone else or anyone from the public have anything that they want to add? Okay, great. I just want to kind of echo what everyone said and how if this program seems to be working. I think that's fantastic. Anything we can do to kind of get to people before they end up in jail is obviously, I think, best for everyone in our community. It saves us money on everything. It also allows them to go about their life without a criminal record to apply for jobs and everything else. So I'm glad that the program seems to be successful, and I'm glad you guys are looking to expand it. I've seen some posts that Captain Higgins has made on Facebook with some of these stories, and it seems to be going well. So I'm glad that you guys are taking advantage of that.
Right. Mr. Young, actually, Mr. Dunn makes a good point. If you look at one of our most recent Facebook posts, we have posted our annual use of force statistics. You will see where we mentioned the co-response and our feelings that our use of force incidents have dropped in direct correlation to this program.
That's great. I'll check that out, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Does anyone on the committee want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept or recommend.
I'll second.
Okay, great. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Cabana,
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Chief Foley.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the time. I did provide a memo, and I hope that was explains where we're coming from. Our budget is a little bit more simplified, as we didn't have a lot of new initiatives to bring before you this year. The majority of our ask for this year is to cover the increase of contractual pay increases and personnel costs. Total personnel costs increased $463,938. Of that, $394 is just for the contractual CBA agreements. $69,019 is to restore a position of a firefighter that was cut from last year's budget. So that'll restore that position this year, which is timely because it goes along with the plan to increase some staffing on some much needed apparatus for the town. And that was recommended by the latest study that was done through the Center for Public Safety Management. So that's in keeping with that study and in progressing the department in that direction with those recommendations that were made. Additionally, the operating expenses increased approximately $96,000. A good majority of that is actually contractual increases due to the addition of a more updated station alerting system called Purvis. And that requires software updates and troubleshooting and everything contractual that goes along with that type of software. So that's the majority of where the operational, big changes are for the operational side. The rest of it is increases due to inflation and just cost of goods and services that I don't think anybody here is foreign to. But I'd be happy to answer any other questions that the committee may have. My understanding is that you already reviewed the departmental equipment. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yep, and I was actually, when I think I messed up on that, I thought he was talking about the capital requests that the department had made, and then I realized he said departmental equipment afterwards, so that was my
Okay.
screw up.
Well, I don't mind going through that at all. I mean, the departmental equipment, we have some money set aside for station maintenance for things outside what is covered by facilities. And then, as typical with every year, we replace a certain amount of our portable radios. They come due, you have to replace them. It's a constant cyclic program. And then we're going to have some personnel. We're anticipating at least 7 personnel being hired this year. With that, we need to provide them with protective equipment, and that has an expiration date on it as well. And then, as typical with the same as the portable radios, hoses and appliances, it's all durable equipment that needs to be replaced from time to time. And then the 20 sets of turnout gear is the personal protective equipment that we have to constantly keep cycling through and replacing over time per NFPA and OSHA standards. You'll see another line item there for the replacement of the ballistic gear that we purchased 5 years ago. It was actually an emergency purchase, and it was done so because we could see the forecasting of the changing times and the different roles that the fire department is going to have to play and has played recently and ongoing into the future. It's unfortunate that is come to it. It's also unfortunate that we have had to wear this equipment on several different occasions to make sure that not only are we protected, but we have the protection necessary to go help the people that we need to. So that's a brief summary, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody else about any of the departmental equipment or the budget overall.
I can't believe that was 5 years ago, and I was and
Right?
and I was gonna ask if you guys had used it, so I'm not happy, I guess, to hear that you have had to, but
Mhm.
I'm glad that you have it.
We're thankful that we have it.
Right. Does anyone from the committee have any questions or comments?
I have a question,
Mr.
Mr.
Young?
Chair. Thanks, Chief Foley, for coming by. In your memo, you says you have an average of 167,000 in revenue coming in. Can you talk a little bit about where that money comes in?
That comes in through the collection of fees for either the fire alarm master boxes or any permits and inspections that our inspection services department provides. And the majority of that money goes into the revolving accounts to cover those costs associated.
Thank you. That's all I had. And while I have the opportunity, thank you and your firefighters for everything they do every year. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Mr. Cirque, I think, has a question.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. I had some questions of the chief, and in fairness to him, he's going to need some time, and that's fine with me in order to respond to them. There are some issues I've talked with him about previously, but there are some new ones as well. The first has to do with the need for and cost of call boxes. Mm-hmm. And I have 4 questions. 1, what percentage of all fire department calls originate from call boxes? And 2, what percentage of fire alarms originate from call boxes? And number 3, what's the cost of maintaining the call boxes? And 4, how long does it take for a call box to be repaired or replaced once it's been determined to need repair or replacement? That's one series of questions. And as I say, I don't by any means expect the chief to be able to answer them now. The second series of questions has to do with the need for and cost of fire truck responses to ambulance calls. Number one, what percentage of fire truck responses turn out to be ambulance calls only? Number two, what's the cost of fire truck responses that turn out to be ambulance calls only? And I'm looking for the rest of my questions.
I think that was it. If you're talking from the
Okay.
list,
Yeah, that's right. And Chief,
Yep.
in fairness, as I said, we've talked about this before, and either I forgot your response or I've added to my list of questions. But the thrust of it, as you can see, is that I think that call boxes are dinosaurs. And number two, I think that it is both inefficient and dangerous to have fire trucks respond to every fire call, because the equipment isn't needed if it's not a fire. And number two, it takes a fire truck out of the headquarters and unable to quickly respond to a real fire when a real fire call comes in.
I do have your questions, and I think I can probably answer a lot of them, Mr. Cirque.
Okay.
So the percent of call boxes that turn into emergencies, percent of fire alarms, I don't know that I'll be able to give you those specific statistics altogether, but I really don't feel as though that it's anything that's really, once I get through the rest of it, I think you might understand where I'm coming from. So the just so everybody knows, the fire alarm call boxes that Mr. Cirque is referring to is the red boxes that you might see on a building as you're walking in, says fire, white handle, pull it down, you can pull it, and it'll initiate a response of the fire department. They work at several.
That's not the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ones on the sidewalk underneath the red balls.
I'll get there, Mr. Cirque.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all part of the same system.
Okay.
So with that system, it's tied into the fire alarm system throughout the entire town. And there's certain areas that have this service and certain places that don't. Typically, the more populated parts of town do have this service, and we're also adding a radio box system at the same time, which, to Mr. Cirque's point, might be a little bit more efficient as the future moves on. But there's a added cost to that. The system itself is on the shoulders of the users. Those boxes that I'm referring to on the sides of the building, they pay a fee. I referred to it earlier with Mr. Young's question. They pay a fee, an annual fee, and that goes into the fire alarm revolving account. That account pays for the maintenance of the entire system, including the street boxes that you see driving through town attached to telephone poles. Additionally, those points, even though that box may not be used all that often, is a point in the system that we don't have to go up into a bucket truck and access. So if there's a trouble within the system, our fire alarm technician can go around and test at certain points at different junctions, those fireboxes being one of them. It's a matter of convenience that we actually have that box that physically sits there with the components that if they pull the alarm, it'll initiate a fire department or emergency response as well. Over the years, how many percentage of fire alarm calls, medical calls, or whatever that have come through, I really couldn't speak to that, but as public safety in general, if one comes through, we're happy that somebody had access to the system and they could get us to them in a timely fashion.
Chief, can you just I understood your response initially about the users of the like the Knox boxes and so forth, paying for the maintenance or replacement of all boxes.
Yeah.
But what were you saying after that with respect to the monitoring at certain points in time? I didn't get that.
So what happens is that obviously this is a system that has aerial cables that run throughout the town. To be able to test that system when there's a fault, our technician can go out to that box that's in the street down at ground level, and instead of taking the time setting up a truck, getting a detail of police officers and those expenses that go along with it to set up and then go up into the air and test up high, our fire alarm technician can go to that box and see if the readings match up to what he's trying to find, so he can localize where the fault is in the system before he sets up, calls in a detail, and the rest of it. So it's actually some time saving, and I would imagine some cost saving as well that goes along with that. So it's really just an access point into the system, but it also provides the ability for somebody to declare an emergency and initiate a response of the fire department.
But accessing and reporting a frequency, reporting an emergency, there's got to be very few of them that are reported by means of those call boxes, aren't they?
We'll receive several a day, sometimes a dozen a day of calls initiated through that municipal fire alarm system. Yes,
through a call box.
Well, through the call box, like I said, they're attached to buildings, they're on poles, they're everywhere throughout, certain areas of town. So it's all the same system. I think what I'm trying to explain, Mr. Serkey, is that, to eliminate the call boxes in the street, I'm not sure what you're saving at that point. You're removing access to the system. If we ever transition fully to a radio box system, then we could maybe strategically place some of these boxes in different locations. But right now it's a not only a means of declaring an emergency, but it also helps us diagnose the system when we have faults. And then when you get into the fire truck responses and the percentage of calls that end up being ambulance calls and what have you, we're subject to state laws and response mandates that the closest available EMS unit responds to the emergency. We are the EMS agency of the town. We don't have ambulances. We contract the ambulance services through currently Brewster Ambulance. They're the transport agency of the town. They also provide a higher level of service through their paramedicine program. So they have paramedics that are on the trucks. Ever since COVID, there hasn't been a lot of paramedics available. They actually have decreased their ability to have 2 paramedics on each individual ambulance. We respond to any emergency that we feel is necessary, that we send an ambulance to, so that the townsperson, the resident, the visitor who calls 911 gets a timely response. We're a very, very large town. And we're also hampered by our road system. We don't have good access to a lot of areas of town. We don't have an ambulance in every area of town. So for the sake of response times, a timely response, and meeting the legal obligations and mandates that we have, we send a fire engine to a lot of medical calls. That doesn't mean that they're going to be tied up that whole time. They may start an initial care when that ambulance shows up. If another emergency comes in their area, they can break off, and often do, go to different emergencies in that area. So it's actually a great service that we have the ability to provide that to our residents, that we have the stations in the areas that we do. I wouldn't look at that as a detriment at all. As far as the cost per run, I'd have to run that cost per every single emergency run that we make. And I would caution on that a little bit, because we're not in the business of profit or efficiency. We're in the business of going to emergencies, saving lives, and helping the people that are calling for our help.
Chief, if I can just follow up, how about sending the trained personnel in the fire department who are capable of responding to emergencies? How about sending them in passenger vehicles rather than in fire trucks? And what related to that, what has prevented the town from contracting with with an ambulance service like Brewster and basically farming out the response to non-fire emergencies to an ambulance service?
We would still have to be responsible for it. I mean, that we are the EMS agency of the town, so we can't just shirk our responsibilities to a private agency. We have that duty to respond to those emergencies. As far as the first part of your question, could you just repeat it again real quick?
Why do you need, if the trained responders
I
are in
gotcha.
are in the firehouse, why do they
Yep.
need a fire truck?
Precisely to your initial concern, what happens if if that unit is tied up, and can't respond to another call? If they're out, if that crew is out on the street with, say, a pickup truck to make that response, now if a fire comes in, they have to respond back to the station, wherever that is. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of our areas are larger than most towns.
Yeah,
and they
I
would
know
have
that.
2 or 3 fire stations. So now you're increasing or double or tripling that response time even more if they're not already on the truck that has the equipment and the trained people. We could look at an alternative response method, hiring cross-trained firefighters to do to make those responses. But again, you're talking about increasing the cost to the resident, because now it's going to be additional personnel with additional apparatus at every station to be able to make that response. Right now, the system that we have is we have regionally positioned EMS response for ambulance transport and higher level of care, and then specific districts of the fire department that covers that entire area. So it's a very efficient system for what we have right now. The last study that we did, the CPSM study, looked at our system, and they said that it is efficient for what we're doing. For us to take on, the full ambulance responsibilities would cost the town several $1 million.
Which services are provided for by Brewster, and as opposed to an in-house responding? Or are you saying that, I mean, when Brewster comes, who sends them and why are they involved?
They are contracted through the town. They're a private contractor. They
Yeah.
are dispatched by our dispatch center along with our fire department personnel.
So for every call that comes in on 911, are you prevented legally from just having Brewster respond to it?
To a certain degree, depending on what the call is, yes. The other part of it is that we look at providing a service and maintaining the NFPA level of response times, and that's something I can get to you, Mr. Cirque, at a certain point. But as far as how quickly we get out the station, how quickly we get on scene, how quickly we start providing that care, if we relied on just the ambulances that we have in town to do that, some people could be waiting 10 minutes before anybody comes knocking on their door after they call 911. And I don't think there's anybody that would feel that that's okay.
What about the town owning its own ambulances so that in response to an emergency, it could send a town-owned ambulance rather than a fire truck? Well,
there's a few different things with that. It's not as cut and dry, but the cost of starting up an ambulance service and maintaining it would, on an annual basis, cost the town millions of dollars.
But there's got to be some cost associated with sending out fire trucks for every 911 call. I mean, I think I mentioned to you personally, a couple of years ago, my back went out and I couldn't get up off the floor. And my wife called 911, and the next thing I know, there's a fire truck in my backyard. And I couldn't understand why that was necessary. And there's got to be a cost associated with sending out fire trucks in response to every 911 call. And I still don't understand why that's enough. I understand the need to be safe, and to have a safe and timely response.
Mhm.
But at some point, the perfect becomes the enemy of the good. And anyway, enough said.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Young?
Chief Foley, I live on Spinnaker Drive. You know where Spinnaker Drive is, right?
Yes, sir.
If I drop dead of my first heart attack, let's say, I drop dead right now. Is there an engine company that's close to me?
Yes.
How long do you think the engine company would take to get to me from
We
where
should-
I am on Spinnaker?
We should be able to get to you in less than 4 minutes.
All right. And then where's the closest ambulance house to where I am?
You would probably get Station 3 if they were available, or Station 6 in Cedarville, and their response time to you would be closer to 8 to 10 minutes.
And the guys on the engine, they have defibs and training and they can help me with my heart attack?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. No
Thank you
problem.
for the-
And the other thing to your point, Mr. Young, is that the unfortunate part about the business that we do, and I understand, Mr. Cirque, where you're coming from and your
Yeah.
particular concern, but a lot of times these events come in, to use Mr. Young's heart attack as an example. Sometimes people refer their chest pain and say, my back hurts, my arm is tingling. And if we didn't make a response, and that they hang up the phone for the arm tingling, and we show up and they're in much worse condition of that because it actually was a cardiac event, I think that, to your point, Mr. Cirque, if you were having a heart attack and it wasn't just back pain that put you on the floor, you would appreciate the fact that somebody was there well trained.
I'm not questioning the need for a timely response, and I'm not questioning the need for a response by someone who's capable and trained to give medical treatment.
Mhm.
What I am questioning is whether it requires a fire truck to be there as opposed to an ambulance. And there's got to be, from a simplistic point of view, there's got to be a more efficient way than the way we're doing it.
There is, and a lot of communities can do that, but they're much smaller, much more consolidated, and have the resources to be able to handle that. We don't. So we try to be as proficient with the resources that we have in town. And right now that requires a lot of times, not all the time. We don't send a fire truck on every single call, but it requires a fire truck to respond with an ambulance. It's just the fire truck's going to get there first, and that's why you saw them first, Mr. Cirque. I appreciate the questions, though. It's a good conversation to have. And, believe me, I'm not one to say that we don't need the funding, and I wouldn't like, 6 more fire stations to be able to meet the NFPA recommendations of response times. But we just simply don't have that luxury in the town of Plymouth. We're too large. We have too limited of a road system. And, if we're going to do alternative vehicles, that might work well in some areas, but not for the whole town. And I'm not sure that the town at this point, in its current, financial condition, would be looking to increase that type of manpower and equipment.
Well, mark me down as unconvinced.
Fair enough. But I'm glad I was able to answer your questions,
Yeah.
Mr. Cirque.
And was that Mr. Young who participated in the conversation? I didn't catch his name.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Mr. Young. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I had one more question that's not as related to this budget, but how are the buildings right now? I know I drive past West Plymouth a lot. I've been down Manomet, and I know I remember years ago when we had that Station 1 catastrophe. I had gone over there, and then I had gotten from Chief Bradley at the time the list of issues that were at each station, and I know that we had then talked about the building maintenance stabilization fund and a bunch of other things to try to start working on these. I know we have some big work going on, obviously, in West Plymouth, Manomet, and other places. So
We do, and I'm happy to report that this week we're going to be moving into the new facility over at the West Plymouth Fire Station. We're not 100% complete with all the construction, but we're complete enough that we can get the firefighters out of the trailer into the station. bringing some of the other resources back into that area that have previously been moved out for the construction. So we're very happy about that. It's a great facility. We'll be doing an open house and ceremony probably sometime in the spring. We still have some site work to do on the exterior, a few punch list items on the inside, but for the majority of it, we're in really great shape over there. Down in Manomet, we're doing a similar project. If anybody's been by the West Plymouth, they can expect to see a similar project down in Manomet. We've actually already started construction down there. We're working on actually the second floor of the addition, and we're moving right along with that. Both projects financially have been doing well. Like I said, we're pretty much complete in West Plymouth, and we're still under budget at that one. And we're on time and under budget in Manomet also. It's early in Manomet, but I expect that, with the team that we have in place and how things are going so far, that we'll be able to maintain that. We did have some land donated to the town through AD Makepeace. That was accepted at the last town meeting. And our plan is, at a certain point, is to come back to town meeting for the funding needed to build a more suitable fire station for the residents of South Plymouth. Currently, right now, we can fit one engine and a brush truck at that facility, and that's about it. The living facility itself is subpar, as you remember, Mr. Dunn, from the list of shortcomings that station has. But a new facility down there would definitely be able to meet the demands of that growing area. There's a lot of construction going on down there. It's very popular. And I expect a lot more residents to be moving into that area. And that's reflective to the call volume that I'm seeing as well. As far as headquarters, we're maintaining. Nothing's really gotten all that much better. We did get the place cleaned up, the mold remediated, and any other health concerns to a certain point. But the facility itself is pretty tired and definitely in need of addressing. But those issues and any future fire station locations are a topic of discussion that will come up at the appropriate time after review with the town manager and finance director.
Thank you. Mr. Pizarro.
Thank you. Through the chair, Chief Foley. You mentioned the ADM Makepeace donation of land. Do you recall how large of a donation was that, or? Go ahead.
It was approximately 2.3 acres of land donated. Yep.
Is that plenty to do a state-of-the-art fire department house?
It is, especially with the grade of that area. It's fairly flat. Until we get in there, we start actually doing some more in-depth site work and exploratory sampling. We won't really know, but considering that some of the other projects that we've done, Station 7, Station 2, they're very tight lots, less than half that size. And so this will give us the opportunity not only to build the station that is needed for that area, but also what will meet the requirements for anything in the future down the line as well.
That's awesome. I believe it's right near the Red Brook subdivision or neighborhood.
It's a little bit north of that, yes, but not inside that area. But that is obviously that whole area, not just the Red Brook, but that whole area has been increasing in population and call volume.
Okay. And last question, that donation, was that a partnership with them? Did you reach out to them, or did they just kind of out of the goodness of their heart reach out to you guys? How did that come to fruition?
So we reached out to several landowners in that area. We looked at what the town owned first to see if there was anything suitable. Then we looked at what available land was in that area, and then contacted any of the landowners that had land that may be suitable for the construction of a fire station. The interesting point to that is anybody who's driven down Bourne Road, including where the current station sits, it's a very you're changing not only direction left and right, but also up and down. I mean, it is a very windy up and down road. So to find a plot of land suitable in size and, also in relation to water, which that will come into play with the 80 Makepeace area. That there's very, very little for selection on where we could have put a fire station, just because we don't want to be in the situation that we are in now, where we're coming out of the station into a blind curve. It's certainly not ideal, and thankfully we haven't had any major issues there thus far.
So I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but good partnership, it sounds like.
I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. They came forward. They said that they'd be willing to do it. We said how much, and they said, we want to be a good neighbor. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. I have one more, which I guess would apply to everyone, but I didn't ask it before. I think contracts are up this year, if I'm not mistaken, for everyone. Do you feel comfortable with this budget that that will cover what needs to be covered?
You starting with me?
Yeah, you're on the hot seat already.
So from a negotiating standpoint, when it comes to the CBA, I don't really get into the financial aspects of that. That's done with the bargaining team, with the town manager and his designees and the finance director. But I'm confident in the town's leadership and the direction that we're going, and I see no issue with the upcoming contract cycle. Could I be right? Could I be wrong? I really couldn't tell you. I'm not sure what the asks or wants are going to be on that end of it. But like I said, I'm confident with the team that's in place.
Great, thank you. I don't know if Chief Flynn, if you're still here, if you have a comment on that as well.
I would agree with Chief Foley's statement. I think we as department heads and the town are in good hands.
Great, thank you. That sounds good to me. If anyone wants to make Mr. Cirque.
I just wanted to ask the fire chief, if you could, when you have the time, if you could respond to my email question by question, that would be helpful.
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. If no one has anything else, we can take a motion for this one after we've put Chief Foley in the interrogation chair.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Mr. Cabana,
Yes,
Mr. Pizarro,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes.
I appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much. Thank you.
Thank
And just
you.
just for to note, Mr. Chairman, nobody's ever accused me of not wanting to talk, so don't you worry about
The
it.
longest presentation. Yeah.
Good. So I think that we voted on everything now. So I don't know if anyone has anything that they want to add before we go. Anyone from the committee? Or if there's anyone from the public that has anything that they'd like to add. All right, we can take a motion to adjourn, I think.
yep, I'll make a motion.
A second.
Excellent. Mr. Cabana,
Yes,
Mr. Pizarro,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes, I was just looking something up. Yes.
and I'll also vote yes. Thank you so much to everyone for taking the time today.
thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Wednesday.
Thank you.
Brian, did you get the email?